Quick thanks to one of our supporters. Did you know formaldehyde can enter a home through all products like engineered wood furniture, computers, carpeting, treated fabrics, hairsprays, cleaning materials. These potentially harmful VOCs can circulate through the indoor living spaces and affect the air you breathe. And according to the EPA, poor indoor air quality has been linked to headaches, fatigue, allergies, asthma, and more. But the good news is you can ensure your client's air is clean with Certainteed Air Renew drywall. Air Renew. Air Renew is indoor air quality drywall. It's the first of its kind, patent-pending drywall that actively cleans the air by permanently removing formaldehyde. When airborne formaldehyde comes into contact with the board through normal air circulation, Air Renew drywall captures the formaldehyde and converts it into safe, inert compounds, keeping it safely within the drywall. Air Renew drywall cuts, installs, and finishes just like a regular drywall and comes in type X and moisture and mold resistance for multiple solution. The board looks, installs, and finishes like standard drywall. It also is available in M2 Tech moisture and mold resistance type X to fit multiple solutions. Indoor air performance tests prove that Air Renew permanently removes the formaldehyde. It has been validated by the ULE through their environmental claims validation programs and works with most water-based acrylic and epoxy paints. All right, well, I want to welcome everybody to the National Green Building Standard. This session will be covering the National Green Building Standard program through the lens of multifamily housing. This course is approved for 1 hour in continuing education units, AIA, HSW, GBCI, NARI Green, AIBD, Certified Green Professional, and may be applicable to your local state-based design or contractor license. Today I'll be your moderator. My name is Brett Little, and I'm the Executive Director here at the Green Home Institute. The Green Home Institute does have a mission to empower people to make healthier and more sustainable choices in the renovation and construction of the places we live. So our speaker today from the Home Innovations Lab is Michelle Foster. She works with builders, architects, remodelers, and other housing professionals to remove barriers to innovation by leveraging home innovation's unparalleled knowledge and experience in market analysis and building science research. Michelle oversees the National Green Building Standard Green, the certification program based on the National Green Building Standard. The program certifies new and remodeled residential buildings and communities of all sizes and has transformed the market for green certified homes. Michelle's work has focused on market-based solutions that solve environmental issues without compromising housing affordability. She has developed Fannie Mae's Smart Commute Mortgage, revamped the energy efficient mortgage, and developed a methodology to calculate the carbon reduction from efficient homes so that they could be sold on the emerging greenhouse gas market. Michelle has a master's in urban planning and environmental studies from the University of Virginia and a bachelor's in the environmental studies from SUNY College of Environmental Science and Forestry. So with that, Michelle, please take it away.
Great, thank you so much. Welcome everybody this morning. The certification program that we offer here at Home Innovation Research Lab is our newest program offering. If you don't know anything about Home Innovation Research Labs, I encourage you to take a look on our website. We've been around for about 53 years, and our mission is to improve the durability, affordability, and performance of housing. And the way we do that, as Brett was saying, is by removing barriers to innovation. So in many ways, the NGBS Green certification program fits right in that. The idea we had back in 2009 when we started was, how do we get more single-family homes and multifamily buildings to earn a green certification, since they were really lagging the market in getting green certified. So as Brett mentioned, we certify homes and multifamily buildings and land developments to the National Green Building Standard. This is a ICC, one of the I codes that ICC has developed, and then starting with the 2015 version, ASHRAE has now also developed the standard, and it becomes an ASHRAE standard. It was intended to be a voluntary above-code program for all types of residential development, and has a very kind of broad and unique scope that we'll talk about. It's also approved as an American National Standard by ANSI. So it's one of the few ANSI-approved standards for green buildings. It roughly followed the 3-year development cycle like all of the other I-codes. The first version came out in 2008. We're no longer using that. That's been sunsetted. The second version, which is the 2012 version, we're currently certifying buildings right now too. The third version, which is the 2015, came out last year. We are starting to have projects register and come into process to earn certifications to that, although I don't think we have certified our first project to use the 2015 yet. I know we have a number of them that have been registered to it. And the next version, the 2018, is about to start to be developed. Started in April, the consensus committee will meet for the first time in Washington, D.C. Again, if you're interested in this, it's a completely open, public process. Anybody can participate, and you can find information about that at homeinnovation.com/NGBS. But essentially, the most important point is to see that the National Green Building Standard evolution is roughly following that 3-year development cycle that all the other building codes are following. The other thing I'll mention before I dig into the requirements of the National Green Building Standard specifically is that I wanted to mention that the National Green Building Standard is embedded within the IgCC. So many of you may be familiar with the International Green Construction Code that was developed by AIA, USGBC, ICC, and ASHRAE a number of years ago. And within the IgCC, what it says is that if you are residential buildings under 4 stories, you have to use the National Green Building Standard as a compliance path. And if you're a residential building that's 4 stories or above, you can select to use the NGBS as a compliance path for any city that's using the IgCC. So there have been a number of cities around the country that have adopted the IgCC, Dallas, Baltimore, the District of Columbia, Montgomery County, Maryland is considering it. And so in all of these places, you can use the National Green Building Standard to comply. And what's been interesting to watch this as well is that in all of those locations, they have recognized and allowed independent third-party certifications, such as ours, NGBS Green, to demonstrate compliance, so that the buildings get the benefit of both complying with the code, obviously, but also having the ability to market that third-party certification. So let's start with looking at what the scope is for the National Green Building Standard. It's unusual in that it's very broad compared to some of the other green certification programs, and it includes all residential development. So you can certify communities or land development of any size. We have certified everything as small as an 8-lot subdivision in Connecticut to a 20,000-acre subdivision out in Utah. It applies to single-family homes, townhomes, and multifamily buildings, both new construction as well as renovation. And the renovation path we'll talk about later today is a great pathway. It's very flexible so that it doesn't necessarily have to be a gut remodel and a very deep major renovation. Doing some minor or kind of moderate renovation, so long as you can hit the performance targets, are also eligible to have that building be certified. I gotta make sure that I talk loudly too, but let me know if I fade out. So as I was saying, for multifamily buildings, the National Green Building Standard applies to any multifamily building, regardless of height, even those that may be mixed use if there's retail on the ground floor, and anything that's really kind of residential-like, so student housing, extended stay hotels, any place where there's the opportunity, the ability for the residents to have sanitation facilities, sleep, eat, cook, and have living facilities. So Home Innovation provides the national certification to the building. What we're doing is assuring that that building is built in compliance with the National Green Building Standard. Our value proposition and the reason that we hear that we get chosen is that we are affordable, we are flexible, and yet at the same time, we're probably the most rigorous program that's out there. And I know lots of people say we can't be all 3 things, and I'm going to explain to you why I think that we've been able to manage that. We're very focused on who the customer is, whether it be the builder or the developer or our verifiers who are doing the inspections, and trying to make the process as streamlined and consumer-friendly as possible. This was something when we started in the very beginning in 2008 and 2009, we did a lot of survey and research to go out and say, why weren't more residential builders using a green certification program? And oftentimes, they just did not find that other programs worked as well with the way they construct and build buildings and the way they made their decisions. They found it difficult to get assistance, interpretations, and we really thought that that was something that we could eliminate as a barrier and make better. Our goal is to really provide a program that provides more value than it costs. And we think there's a number of specific values that builders get from it. They get, obviously, the marketing for the third-party certification, the ability potentially to have higher valuation when the project is done and has that certification. We've seen some really great improvements on the appraisal and valuation side that are starting to recognize that for, frankly, all green certified properties. And then a number of clients obviously using it, the program for their reputation, the fact that they have corporate sustainability commitments and goals, and having this quality assurance aspect. We have a very, very stringent verification requirements for our program. And in the end, a lot of the builders and developers that we work with talk about how they feel our program helps assure that they're delivering a high quality, high performing asset. This was one of our first buildings, high-rise buildings that we certified in Manhattan. If you're familiar with the Chelsea area of Manhattan, you can see that's the Highline Park that's going across the street right there. This is an equity residential property, and this was certified in 2010. So there's a couple of things that make this program different than other programs. The first thing goes to the National Green Building Standard itself. It is written in code language, not because it was intended to be adopted as code, but because the Consensus Committee felt very importantly, and obviously it was one of the I codes, but that this would be a way to eliminate, again, some of the barriers and make it more accessible. Builders and architects, contractors, the HVAC contractor, all of them are familiar with the way the code is written. And really anybody who's on the project team can pick up the NGBS, read the practice, and understand what the intent is and how to be compliant with it. It was designed to become very accessible for anybody in the industry. There are not many mandatory provisions in the standard. There are some. There are no exemptions. They must be done for the building to be certified. But instead, it's a very expansive, flexible point-based system. So there are over 1,100 points to choose from in looking for points to get your building certified. On the program side, our philosophy, I think, has been very different. Some other programs have really targeted those top 25% of performing buildings that are being constructed. And instead, our philosophy was, how do you get the entire industry to build a better building and kind of push up the whole industry? So we knew that we had to deal with a number of real and perceived barriers, such as cost, direct and indirect. Were they real costs that were there to get the building certified, or were they perhaps perceived costs that we had to sort of break down some of those myths? Some of the difficulty or inflexibility of programs that have been out there and that were choices previously, and then processing hurdles. I'll tell you the number one thing that, again, when we were surveying prospective clients in the beginning is many of the GCs that were building multifamily buildings said that they never wanted to work on a green certification project again because they only got paid when the green certification was issued. And oftentimes that would take several months, sometimes even 4 or 6 months after the building was complete. And, you know, that really resonated with me. I thought that was reasonable of them. You know, I wouldn't want to wait that long to get paid. And so as based on that and after hearing that feedback, we initiated a one-day turnaround. So for NGBS Green, whether you have a question or interpretation, to the extent possible, we try to get an answer within 1 business day. But most importantly for the clients, if the paperwork is complete and the fee has been paid, we will do everything possible to get that certification back to the client within 1 business day. This is a very typical project of what's getting certified right now, 4 or 5 story, usually wood frame construction, sometimes on a podium with a garage. This is a project in Houston, Texas. We've done very well in Texas and all the major cities. But increasingly, and I'll show you some pictures of the projects and the buildings that are coming into the program. Increasingly, we're seeing much, much larger high-rise buildings coming in very dense urban areas. One of the things that we learned very early on was that architects really liked the National Green Building Standard and the NGBS Green program. And I think that was largely a combination of a couple of reasons. First, while there are definitely design-focused practices in the NGBS, there are also lots of practices that are more construction-based or verification-based while the building is going through construction. And so it doesn't end with the architect. It doesn't just end with the design process. A lot of architects also said that because the NGBS was fairly easy to use and because it was written in code language, it was a great tool for their younger architects to learn about sustainability and high performance and how to get their buildings to achieve those kind of higher levels of green. But then last, the thing that we heard most frequently is that what they design is what gets built. And a number of verifiers, a number of architects felt that in a lot of green projects, sometimes things that they designed in get value engineered out at the construction site. And because of the stringent verification requirements we have, that wasn't happening with NGBS Green projects. So they really kind of come around to liking this as a program, and it becomes another opportunity or tool for them to be able to convince their clients to get green certified and go green. I always like showing our certification stats. It's interesting because I happened to look at them earlier this morning, and even just in a short time, about a month's time, these have changed significantly. So we've done about almost 12,000 single-family homes with 1,500 homes in the pipeline. But as you can see, the real growth of the program has been in multifamily. So I'm pretty sure we're over that 85,000 units on the multifamily side, and I know that we have 75,000 units in the pipeline because I just saw it this morning. In fact, we're coming very close to our 100,000th certification that we're hoping to celebrate at the end of March. So the program has really grown fairly quickly since we started in late 2008, early 2009, with multifamily by far being the fastest growing sector. A couple of years ago, we tried to put together a market share chart. I'll be the first to admit this chart is extraordinarily difficult to put together because getting the numbers out of the different programs is more difficult than you would imagine. The previous numbers I showed you are posted on our website. It's a real-time counter, so you can actually see the numbers go up as we certify it. That's not always the case. But it did even surprise us that being around in such a short period of time that we were certifying kind of the largest segment of the market. But what you can see from this that I think is sort of useful is about half of the residential certifications in the United States right now are being done by the 2 national programs, with the remaining being done by the smaller local or regional programs. Over the time that we've collected this data, we've seen the national share grow slightly, and I think that's likely to potentially increase going forward since both LEED and NGBS tend to be recognized on the appraisal addendums, for example, recognized in some of the financing incentives that are out there. But certainly a lot of these local programs, regional programs are strong. They've been around for a long time. They've got great brand recognition, and I think will continue to serve their local market. Just to take a look at where we're strongest, these are our top 10 states from 2015 when we looked at the numbers, and the states really didn't change too much for 2016. So kind of what you would call the smile in the United States, running down the East Coast, across to Texas. We've been gaining in popularity on the western coast, but again, California, Oregon, and Washington have all had pretty strong regional programs to date. On the multifamily side, we're really working with any of the large multifamily builders and developers. So if you were to look at the top 25 builders and owners in the multifamily arena, We've worked with all of them. I've kind of listed them on the right-hand side. And a number of them are using us for 100% of their new construction products. Alliance and Crescent and Wood Partners, with a few exceptions of if there are areas maybe doesn't recognize NGBS Green, 100% of their new construction product is getting certified through us. But we work equally with lots of affordable multifamily developers, smaller multifamily developers. Increasingly, NGBS Green is recognized in the low-income housing tax credit programs. I think there are 27 states right now that recognize NGBS Green. So we've kind of worked across the spectrum of different multifamily projects. If you ask the multifamily developers why they're using the program, you'll hear a couple of consistent answers. First, increasingly the investors, the equity investors, want to see a green certification. They believe there has been statistically significant data that shows that commercial buildings, office buildings, for example, that have a green certification are valued higher or are leasing at higher rates. We have not heard that multifamily buildings are renting for higher amounts that have a green certification, but I think the idea is more on the long-term valuation prospect, that so long as you can get the green certification affordably, they want their clients to have it. So there's really that perceived value in the long term, both on the front end and the back end. And in addition, as I mentioned earlier, a lot of the multifamily developers or builders have made corporate commitments towards being more sustainable. They have sustainability goals and objectives. And having their project certified really fits into that broader corporate objective. The other thing that's really helped to drive the market in the last 2 years have been a number of significant financing incentives for multifamily buildings that earn a green certification. First and foremost, huge mortgage insurance premium reductions from HUD if you earn NGBS Green. It's almost a 0.5% reduction. Clearly would save almost any multifamily developer or building owner way more over the lifetime of the mortgage than it would cost them to get the green certification. This has been a really great program because we've seen builders or developers who've never really considered getting green certified for their projects come in, be interested in the program, and then start to pursue getting their projects certified, which has been just awesome. But both Freddie and Fannie also have preferred financing available if the building earns NGBS Green certification, either if it's a newly built building or if it's a renovation, and some nice incentives to help pay for some of the assessment that needs to be done for older buildings and for some of the upgrades. So this is also really helping to drive the multifamily market to seeking green certification. So let's talk about the National Building Standard itself and what's required to get certified. So if you look at the practice categories of the NGBS, there's nothing really unusual here, right? If you looked at any of those other green programs that I showed you earlier, they would be essentially the same categories. So water efficiency, energy efficiency, resource efficiency. There's nothing particularly unique here. But this is what really makes the NGBS different and makes it stand apart. So if you look down that big fat column in the middle here, those are the categories that I just mentioned to you of green building practices. And then if you look across, there are 4 certification levels: bronze, silver, gold, and emerald. And what you'll see in the smaller columns down here are the point minimums that a building needs to attain in order to earn certification. So again, unlike really any of the programs out there, there are point minimums that a building has to attain in order to get certified. A building has to meet all of these point minimums and then get a total of 231 points to be certified at bronze. So it's a very comprehensive green standard. You can't get all your points in the energy efficiency chapter or one of the other chapters. You have to meet all these requirements. And at the same time, to move up in level, you'll notice that the point requirements get higher in every category. And the building or the project is going to be judged by their lowest score. So let's say you have a project looking to go for silver certification, and they're able to get, say, 350 points total, but in the water efficiency chapter, they only have 30 points. The building gets certified at the bronze level. So really this rigor in that we know that if you're certified at silver, that building is greener and higher performing than a bronze level building. And if you're a gold building, you're going to be greener and higher performing than a bronze or a silver level building. So very rigorous. But at the same time, lots of flexibility. So if you remember, I said earlier that there were over 1,100 points to choose from. And you'll see that just, for example, for bronze, you need 231, for silver, 349. So for silver, 349 points out of 1,100. That really lets architects and builders and developers pick those green practices that are cost-effective, make the most sense for that particular project's location, climate zone, ultimate client base. Is this an affordable market rate? Is it affordable? Is it a market rate? Is it maybe a luxury building? And so they can really pick those things that make the most sense. So again, if there's no other slide or no other explanation about the National Building Standard to explain how it's different than some of the other programs, I think this is really it in having people understand the program.
Hey, Michelle, here's a question, and I'm going to sort of elaborate on it a little bit. So Morgan, please let me know if I don't cover it correctly, and maybe you can just kind of give us a high-level answer, and we can get into some more details later. But the question is, and I think the question is, how is Home Innovations Lab, I guess, determining the weight, right, of each credit and how many points they're worth? So if one thing is worth more points, what process did you go through to determine that should be worth more points?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. So let me explain a little bit about the ANSI process, how that works, and the role that we play at Home Innovation. So Home Innovation has a kind of dual role in the National Green Building Standard. We serve as secretariat to the development process, and we serve as adopting entity. What I do here, and what we're talking about now, the certification of the buildings, is how we are acting as adopting entity. We have adopted the National Green Building Standard and provide certification services to the building industry. But let's go to the development side. Because this is an ANSI standard, there are very strict rules that have to be followed in the development of the standard. So Home Innovation serves as secretariat, but what that means is that all of our staff, and it's not my staff on the green team, it's another staff, but all of our staff does is oversee the process of the consensus committee. So a consensus committee is put together. They have to be representative of the industry as a whole. They have to represent people who would use the standards, such as builders and developers. They have to represent other stakeholders in the industry, such as product manufacturers or associations like the National Insulation Association. And then they represent, obviously, because of ICC and ASHRAE's involvement, code officials and the kind of enforcement side of it. That consensus committee is put together, and they are the ones who determine what are the green practices that are in the National Green Building Standard. It's about a 2-year development process for them to go through and consider what practices. It's completely open to the public, so the public gets to suggest anything that they want the consensus committee to consider what's put into the standard. And it's very open process. Any practice that the consensus committee rejects, they have to give a reason for and explain why they rejected something from the public. And they are the ones who determine the point requirements. So again, Home Innovation has nothing to do with setting the points, and we can't change them. We can't exempt projects from mandatory provisions. That is solely the provision of the consensus committee. But in general, what the consensus committee tried to do was to make the point assignment roughly based on how difficult the practice was to implement. So practices that were easy to do, got less points, practices that were more difficult or more expensive, had much bigger impact with regard to the sustainability building, would get more points, with the exception of the energy efficiency chapter. The energy efficiency chapter, the points there were calibrated by the U.S. Department of Energy so that every point was roughly equivalent to a 0.5% reduction in energy use over the baseline of that particular NGBS. So we're talking right here about the 2012 NGBS. The baseline of the 2012 NGBS is the 2009 IgCC. So for the bronze level, requiring 30 points would be about a 15% reduction in energy use to get to the bronze level, and then as you see, a 50% reduction in energy use to get to the emerald level. So again, because energy is so measurable, they did that calibration so that we knew exactly what the points were worth. They also calibrated for the 2012 water efficiency in a much more rigorous process than had previously been calibrated for the points for water efficiency in the 2008 version, but it's not quite as rigorous as the calibration that went on for energy. Did that answer the question completely?
I think that was great. Thank you.
Okay, you're welcome. So as I mentioned, you can use the National Green Building Standard for single-family homes. We've certified just about every type of home that you can imagine, typical suburban one that you see here, more infill kind of urban development. Our sweet spot are the builders that really use us tend to be the smaller volume builders, the custom builders, and then the regional production builders. All of the national production builders have used the NGBS, but none of them have made the commitment yet to do 100% of their homes. Okay. On the multifamily side, we've pretty much done any type of multifamily building that you can imagine, including student housing and extended stay hotels. Again, very typical projects that you would see here. Village Green has used us for a number of projects. This is in Minneapolis. Very typical from a height and what's being certified right now. But then increasingly what we're seeing in the larger cities, these are a series of buildings that are coming in from Miami, very large skyscraper buildings that are using NGBS to get certified. So really running kind of the gamut of multifamily residential. So to get certified, there are two different types of practices. Mandatory ones in the NGBS have to be successfully completed for certification at any level. There are absolutely no exemptions to these, and generally there are no points. So you just have to do them, and you have to do them successfully. Again, in general, they're there to ensure that there's this kind of minimum baseline code compliance, because we're certifying nationally, and the building codes across the country vary so significantly. Then the building has to earn enough points of the voluntary practices. And again, as I mentioned, the points are generally based on how difficult or how expensive it is to implement that particular practice. And the practice can be either design-related, product selection, or construction-based. So it kind of really goes across the whole spectrum of the construction process. Again, very typical building that we're certifying in Atlanta, Georgia. So I always get asked to do kind of a quick comparison of the National Green Building Standard compared to the LEED rating system. You know, I'd like to start by saying we think it's good that there's choice. We think that builders and developers and the industry as a whole really benefit from being able to choose from different programs. But it's helpful to do sort of a broad comparison. I will say that I have done the practice by practice comparison. It's possible. It's very difficult. And to be honest, I don't really think you actually learn all that much because the programs are so different from a philosophical perspective. I think this is almost a better way to compare them. So from a point perspective, as you guys probably know, the LEED rating systems are largely 100 points compared to the NGBS, which is over 1,100 points. LEED was really developed initially for commercial office buildings And it wasn't until much later on that it started to be used for residential, both multifamily and single family, where the NGBS was really developed from the get-go for residential. We only do residential. We don't do any office space or industrial healthcare facilities. We're really laser-like focused on the residential community. There are more mandatory practices in the LEED rating system as compared to NGBS. Instead, in the NGBS, you're picking more optional practices to hit those point minimums. And we've got those point minimums in the category so that you're really ensuring that your building is kind of comprehensively green. It's not common for buildings to get certified by both programs, and it happens occasionally. And what we'll see based on these requirements for the point minimums is that we've had a couple of buildings that cannot attain emerald for NGBS but have made it to platinum. And again, I think that's because of those point minimums in those categories. Again, kind of NGBS, there's a balance between the design, construction, and maintenance practices that have to be put into place, whereas LEED is much more of a design focus. And then really when it comes down to cost, you know, we've really tried to be as affordable as possible. So there really aren't, other than the cost for the verifier, which we'll talk about, and the certification fee, there's really no other additional cost for NGBS. We don't charge a registration fee. We don't charge fees for interpretations or technical assistance. We try to really kind of eliminate that from the program. There's also, for those of you interested in renovation, I think a really great pathway for modeling projects. It's very streamlined and it's performance-based. This is, in fact, an extremely affordable multifamily building in Denton, Texas that was able to achieve emerald extremely affordably, so we know that it works. And I want to explain to you, but we've also seen it be used for conversions of buildings. So these are two formerly office buildings both in Minneapolis that were converted over using NGBS Green to get certified. And I don't think they hit emerald, but I'm pretty sure they hit the higher levels like gold. So here's how the renovation pathway works. It's strictly performance-based. What you're going to have to do is go in and determine what is the baseline energy and water use for the building. And then there will be minimums that you have to achieve depending on the certification level. I'll show you that in a minute. But then all of the other points can be in whichever category you want from the remaining 4 categories. So unlike new construction, there are not category minimums for, say, water efficiency, for resource efficiency or indoor air quality. So here's the way it breaks down. If you measure the baseline energy and water use of the building as is, and then you implement improvements in that building, and you can make that building reduce the energy consumption by 15%, reduce the water consumption by 20%, and then get an additional 88 points in those other 4 categories, you can get bronze. And so you can easily see how these older, poorly performing buildings can attain some of these higher levels like 45% reduction in energy, 50% reduction in water, and get those additional points to get those higher certification levels like gold and emerald. So it's really a streamlined path, and it works great with historic properties because honestly, the National Green Building Standard doesn't care how you get to the improvement. So if you can't change the windows, or we're working on a project recently where they're not allowed to affect or do any changes whatsoever to the facade of the building, that's okay. As long as you can get the energy and water use down for that building and improve that, you can get certified. So it may mean that you have to put in a better HVAC system. You have to really kind of up your game from an energy efficiency perspective in other ways other than replacing the windows, but you can still get that green certification. So we haven't seen a huge number of buildings use this yet. It's becoming increasingly more popular. We're seeing more projects come in, again, particularly because that HUD mortgage insurance premium reduction will apply for existing buildings that are being renovated. But I just think it's a really great way to kind of focus on all of those older buildings out there that could use these improvements, become more higher performing, and earn the green certification at the same time. Our process is really simple. It's essentially, from a builder's or developer's perspective, 4 steps. They score the project. We've built a foolproof Excel scoring spreadsheet that can walk the developer or the architect through the process. It's designed to make it as easy and as streamlined as possible, and I'll show you what that looks like. Once the architect or the developer has figured out what practices from the NGBS they're going to include in the building, what they would do is hire a verifier. We require every project that gets certified to have at least 2 inspections, one before the drywall is installed, but after the inside of the wall is complete, and one when the building is complete. That verifier needs to get into every single unit and needs to visually inspect just about every single practice, so very rigorous in what's required. But they're the ones, too, that are really going to help that builder-developer get to earn that green certification and get them through the process. So they will be the ones to register the building. As I mentioned, there's no cost for registration. It's absolutely free, but it has to be done by an accredited verifier. The building will start construction. The verifier schedules with the site superintendent their visits to make sure they can come and confirm all the practices. And then Home Innovation would certify the building. We review all of the verifier's reports at the rough stage and at the final stage to make sure they're accurate and complete. If there's anything that we see amiss, we will call the verifier, try to get more information. And like I mentioned, we like to do those inspection report reviews within 1 business day of receiving them so we can get back to the verifier as soon as possible. And if we see a problem, hopefully have that be able to be corrected. Crescent Community is doing all of their projects. This is a project that they have in Atlanta, Georgia. So here's the green scoring spreadsheet. You can download it for free. It's at homeinnovation.com/green scoring. It's very easy to use. If you put something in there that's wrong, so let's say you're working on a project in Miami and you tell us that you're going to install that practice to stop ice damming, the spreadsheet's going to turn red and say, no, something's wrong here. You said you were in climate zone 1. You shouldn't have to worry about anything that has to do with ice or frost. So really intuitive, trying to make it, again, as simple as possible, walk you through making sure you're hitting those mandatory items. They'll turn red if you're not doing those, making sure you're hitting those point minimums for each category of green building practice, and then getting your total points for the certification. This is what is then given to the verifier so that they know what they're going to inspect and what practices they're going to look for. But the verifiers can help the builders with this too. They can go to the builder or go to the architect and help them score the project, particularly if they're new. We qualify, train, test, and accredit our verifiers. We have about 230 nationwide. That number has been remarkably consistent since we started the program. They have to have previous experience in residential construction and green building. Then they have to go through a training that we provide online and pass a 3-part test, 80% pass rate or better on each section. We will then confirm they have sufficient insurance because we don't want them, quite frankly, on anyone's job site without being insured. And they would be accredited for 1 year, and they have to renew with us annually. We have quality assurance procedures in place. We do 100% review of all the inspection reports that they submit to make sure that they look great. And we also do audits of their work. We do a certain percentage of desktop audits of everything that's coming in, where we ask a series of more detailed, comprehensive questions to the verifier to make sure they're doing what we want them to do. And we do in-field audits of their work to make sure that they're verifying the way they're supposed to verify. And then really, you know, regardless of whatever program you're thinking about or considering or trying to have a client use, they're the same buckets of costs that have to be considered. And I'll walk through each of these for this program. So for unexpected soft costs, these are things that maybe the builder didn't see coming. They didn't realize they had to pay for an interpretation. They didn't realize there would be a registration fee. Kind of all that heartache, or they didn't realize they would have to be delayed a couple of weeks while they were waiting for something. This is what I kind of call the unexpected soft costs. We've really, to the extent possible, tried to eliminate these completely so that they just don't exist. And I think we've done a fairly good job of that. Because we want that real transparent process from the beginning so the builder and developer knows what they're getting into. There's no question for our program, the verification costs for a builder is the biggest bucket of cost because the verifiers out there having to get into every unit and seeing the project at least twice. Verifiers set their own fees. We do not get involved whatsoever in what they set as their fees, so it's very market driven depending on verifier experience, how many other verifiers in the market. I will say on the single family side, the verifiers are likely to need to be fairly close to the project to make sense. But on the multifamily side, really kind of all bets are off. We have verifiers who are going around the country and able to make this work. They often will subcontract with another verifier to do some of the inspections. It's hard to put a number on it, but roughly what I hear is probably anywhere from $75 to a couple $100 per apartment, depending on the other services the verifier is providing. So verifiers are often HERS raters, they're often doing energy modeling, they may be providing some other consulting services, but that's about the range that I hear. But again, they set their own fees. Practices and products, so sticks and bricks. What does it cost to take a code minimum building to get up to certification level? We took a look at this a couple of years ago. It's a little bit out of date, but what we found is that for a single-family home, it's definitely under 2% total cost, so cost for certification, verification, and sticks and bricks to get a code minimum home up to the bronze level. On the multifamily side, percentage-wise, it's far less than that. Obviously, multifamily projects have much greater total cost. We've had a hard time kind of putting sticks and bricks costs together for multifamily buildings because they vary so much, you know, from the garden style apartments to the high rises. And it'll depend a lot on what the baseline energy code is for that particular state. What I can say generally is that, you know, if your state is at a higher energy efficiency baseline, obviously the cost will be lower than if you're still at the 2009. And then certification fees, again, we've tried to make them as affordable as possible. $200 for a single, and then, yeah, I wonder if it's on the next slide. Yep, okay. $200 for a single family building, $200 for a multifamily building, plus $30 per unit if it's up to 3 stories, and then 4 stories and above it goes to $600 per building plus $30 a unit. But of course, we have volume discounts for those larger properties, such as we have a project in Virginia that's 62 buildings of student housing, so we can offer them a volume discount. If you're new to the program or you want to learn more about the program, I highly encourage you to download our Builder's Resource Guide. This was designed to be kind of quick guide. If you're used to buying electronic devices now and you can get that little quick guide instead of a big instruction manual, just to familiarize people with the program, the process, and the policies. It's a great tool for verifiers to use with clients to get to know the program better. And then the last thing I just wanted to mention, we're very excited about this. While we mostly do our marketing B2B from home innovation to verifiers or to the builders, we knew that there needed to be a way to really kind of reach out to the consumers and be a little bit more B2C for those consumers who are looking for a green home. So we launched NGBS.com. This is a consumer website that's designed to be a place that if you're buying or renting and you want it to be green, you can come here and find what's available. So it's designed to be very easy and streamlined. You come in, this is the main web page, and you say, I either want to buy a home or I want to rent in a green building. We give kind of basic information about the program and why a green certified home is better and why someone should want to choose a green certified home. It's also a way for builders to say, you know, don't take our, don't take my word for it. We're getting an independent certification, you can come here, consumer, and read about it and learn more about the program. And then what we do is all of the projects that are either in process or certified or listed here, they can come and the builders can have as many pictures as they want on here. It's completely free. It's just part of being part of the program. So you could say, you know, I want to look for single-family homes in North Carolina, pick the county, whether you're looking for Raleigh, and then kind of see the homes, go down to the builder. And what we really want them to do is either to go straight to the builder's website to find out more information, or they can use this form to send the builder an email and say, hey, I'm interested, how can I get more information? And then hopefully in the future what we'll be able to do is start to track, wow, we have a lot of people coming and looking for green certified homes in, I'm just making this up, you know, Phoenix, Arizona, but we don't have a lot of builders. Maybe that's the way that we can convince builders in Phoenix to start using a program like NGBS Green. So we're really excited about this. We're starting to push this out through Google so that consumers who are, again, looking to buy a home or rent an apartment can see this as a way to really kind of find their next home, which we think will be a better home. And then this is just one of the more local buildings that we have going up in Washington, D.C. And I think that's it, and I'm happy to answer any questions that there might be.
Great, yeah, thanks, Michelle. We do have a couple questions rolling in, and I want to give everybody a chance to drop some questions in there. And as you're putting your questions in real quick, for those of you attending live, after this session, a survey will pop up or will be sent to your email. It's the same survey. Please just take it once. Make sure to take that and then follow the reporting instructions within the email that's sent to you. For those of you watching on demand on the recording, make sure to take the 10-question quiz and get an 80% passing rate to get your certificate. And as the questions are rolling in, real quick here, big thanks to our sponsors who allow us to do these sessions: Sun Intuitive Self-Tinting Glass, the Build Equinox CERV Smart Ventilation System, Niagara Conservation, lowest flow toilets on the planet, Panasonic Ventilation, check them out for all your bath fan and multifamily ERV retrofit needs, and then Certainteed St. Gobain, Air Renew, Formaldehyde, Eating Drywall. So Michelle, a question did come in. It was pretty specific, so I wonder if maybe directing them on to that builder's guide would be the best place. You know, when your screen was up there about hitting those reduction targets on renovations for water and energy, the question was, you know, what kind of products or processes do you see to help people hit those targets? And I realize that's kind of a loaded question, so maybe somewhere going to like the builder resource would help someone get started on the right track on what they can do for energy and water reductions.
So, well, I can say this, that it's most common, and I didn't talk, and so this is a good question for me to expand upon something that I didn't. One of the things I started to say in the very beginning and I didn't talk about is how you can really use the renovation test for both moderate renovation and even a gut renovation. It would work with either. What we typically see on the more moderate side is that there'll be an older building, fairly poorly performing, and they'll replace the HVAC, and that gets them a really good way toward hitting that reduction in energy use. They just had such a crappy system in there to begin with that just by changing out the HVAC can get them a big way toward that. Then, of course, you know, they've got to get that water target. So generally what that means is that they're going to be replacing the toilets, all of the faucets and fixtures, the shower heads, in all of the units, and that will get them a good way toward getting that water reduction. For the more moderate renovations, we generally don't see those bigger ticket items like window replacements, which, you know, I think is, again, fine as long as they're getting to that energy reduction, however they get there, and that makes the whole process more affordable for some of these cost-constrained projects. But that's kind of all I really could share from a product perspective as far as how they're getting those reductions in energy and water use.
Great, thanks. You know, on the multifamily side, a lot of programs especially for low-rise, use the Energy Star and the HERS index to look at energy savings reductions both for new and existing homes. And then if I understand right, on the more mid-rise to high-rise, they're looking at the multifamily high-rise program under the Energy Star program. How does REM rate and the Energy Star program, both low-rise and multifamily high-rise, play into or work with National Green Building Standard?
So we do see a number of our projects getting certified through Energy Star. I didn't mention, but for the 2012, there were really 3 different pathways to comply for energy efficiency. There's a performance path, which is exactly what it sounds like. It's to do modeling and demonstrate that the building is going to be a certain percentage above code and hit that target that they need to get to. There's a prescriptive path, which is more of a checklist. They have to implement certain practices and get the points towards achieving the total. And then there's actually an alternative bronze path. For the 2012, what it says is that if you're certified to Energy Star, you then don't have to do anything else for energy. You just have to get all the points and do all the mandatory items for all the other chapters, and you can get certified at the bronze level, but no higher than that. And the idea there from the consensus committee was, how do we take those builders that are already building an energy efficient residence and get them to doing a more comprehensive green program? Now, the 2016 NGBS expanded that a little further and said, depending on what version of Energy Star you're using, you can get either bronze or silver with the alternative compliance path. So that it kind of expanded it, kind of giving the recognition that there were more than one version of Energy Star that was being used. So that's kind of one way that we tie into that. The other way I should mention is that, especially on the multifamily side, with the HUD mortgage insurance premium reduction, buildings to be eligible for that not only have to get a certification like NGBS Green, but they also have to use Portfolio Manager to track the performance of the building starting 1 year after the building is completed. And so what we have been working with is a number of verifiers who are starting to use the Portfolio Manager tool during the design phase of the building, whether it is an existing building that's going to be renovated or if it's a new building, to make sure that they'll then be able to hit that 75 target score in Portfolio Manager after the building is built and occupied and performing. So that's the other thing that I should mention. We don't see that we don't see that many buildings so far, at least on the multifamily side, coming in that are getting Energy Star certified and NGBS Green. I know Energy Star multifamily high-rise is going to have some significant program changes, so that may change in the future as more people use that program.
When you're getting into these large commercial or commercial buildings that are residential units but have commercial retail or office space, what requirements are there in regards to, what percentage does the building have to be residential versus commercial? And then on that thought, what requirements do the commercial spaces have to follow, if any, in regards to National Green Building Standard?
So all the versions of the National Green Building Standard at this point only apply to the residential portions of the building. So when I showed you, for example, there was that one building in Miami, I believe there was a Whole Foods on the ground floor, and then there was a number of, well, I guess the garage would have, to the extent that the garage is part of the residential portion, but we're certifying that residential portion of the building, not that ground floor retail.
So there doesn't have to be any.
That's right.
So basically, the answer is you can certify any building. You just certify the residential portion, so it can be any percentage, and you don't have to worry about the commercial spaces. Is that
yeah, that's right. Except for the exceptions that would be, for example, if you're in a city that requires, for example, the IgCC as a code minimum, you would then use the IgCC for that first floor, and then the NGBS for the remaining portion of the building.
What, I know some green rating systems and like RemRate allow for unit sampling to help, essentially to help keep costs down. How does NGBS look at sampling applicability?
So we allow sampling for the energy practices that essentially are allowed to have samples that resin allows for, but we don't allow sampling for the other green practices. So essentially, we will often defer to Energy Star or ResNet if they have specific requirements. For example, ResNet also accredits software, energy modeling software, and we recognize all the energy modeling software that they have accredited. But so we defer to, if ResNet allows sampling for certain practices, or Energy Star allows sampling for certain practices, those are okay. There's a handful of those energy efficiency specific practices. Other than that, though, not allowed for the program. The verifier is going in and looking at all of the practices. Now, having said that, we do allow the verifier some discretion. In the end, they have to feel 100% sure that this building that they're looking at is compliant. But let's say you have, let's say a building is claiming points for low flow toilets, and let's say it's a 247 unit building. And the developer provides to the verifier the invoice and delivery notice that 247 toilets were delivered to that site. Those toilets are compliant with what the verifier needs to look for. What we would tell the verifier at that point is, you don't have to look at 247 toilets, but as you're going through the apartment, and you have to go through each and every apartment, just make sure that occasionally you're checking and make sure that that toilet is the toilet that you're expecting to see in there. So it's kind of like a combination there of documentation and visual inspection. And I think what we hear from the verifiers is, depending on who they're working for, they'll use their discretion. Working with a developer that they've worked with a lot, they're a little more comfortable seeing the invoicing and seeing the stuff that's been delivered and kind of spot checking that way. Brand new developers that they've not worked with, they're going to be a little bit more careful making sure that everything is exactly what they expect to see.
A lot of times, especially with project teams that are new to green building programs, no matter what program it is, a lot of the extra credit questions or points that they might be going after tend to get pushed over to the rater, verifier, whoever that might be. And then especially with National Green Building Standard, I've noticed, obviously it's a good thing there's a lot more choice than mandatory. But on the flip side, with a project team who doesn't know too much about the program, they tend to want the verifier maybe to make those choices. How far should the verifier's role be in making these types of choices as far as green selections or strategies in any of these credit categories?
So we do have a couple of hard and fast prohibitions for verifiers in providing verification services. They obviously cannot be an employee of the builder or developer for the project that they're working for. They cannot have provided any product in that project. So they can't have provided the insulation or anything else that's going into that project. And they can't have participated in the construction of the project, kind of actual picking up a hammer and working on the project. And they can't be an employee of the local Home Builders Association or an elected officer of the local or state Home Builders Association. So those are prohibitions they can never, ever violate. If they provide any other services to the builder other than just verification services, so for example, if they're doing the energy modeling, or if they're also the rater for the project, they're supposed to disclose that on their verification report and explain that to us so that there's no appearance of a conflict of interest. Many of them do provide more widespread consulting services, so they are working closely with the architect to help them pick which practices. And we're comfortable with that. We don't really have a problem with that. When I talk to architects or builders and developers who are new to the program, I highly encourage them to work with an experienced verifier, because I think that those verifiers can really help them through the process, maybe know about practices that are that they haven't considered, that they should consider to include in the building, maybe help them get up to a higher certification level than they were considering. So we don't have any problem with the verifiers working closely with the project team in the design stage, helping them pick the practices that they make sense, maybe discouraging them from those practices like the composting toilet that may be a little bit more difficult to implement. But anytime they're providing more than just verification services, they're disclosing that on both the rough inspection report as well as the final inspection report.
Great. Well, we are at our time. I don't see any other questions. Before we wrap up, Michelle, can you just tell us where people can contact you to find out more information?
Yes, to find out more information about the program, it's homeinnovation.com/green, and that's the main green landing pages for the NGBS Green Certification Program. You can get in touch with me directly at mfoster@homeinnovation.com. And should you be looking to buy or rent a better home than you may have now, please go to ngbs.com to find your next green home.
All right. Well, thank you, Michelle. Thanks to the Home Innovation Lab for coming on out today. Hope everyone enjoys the rest of your week. Make sure to check out our continuing series every Wednesday here at greenhomeinstitute.org. Take care. Thank you.